issues that pertain to older individuals, and that being focusing today on summer and the heat. So, in this first slide, you probably resonate with a lot of this, or at least I hope you do. These are just some basic tips, you know, staying hydrated, applying sunscreen to avoid burns, house, keep it circulating air, cool air if possible, right? Uh, cool water baths, showers, or just a place to cool down, especially the back of your neck. Um, wearing light colored outfits so you're not attracting so much sunlight, I imagine. Loose clothing and the sunglasses, all important. I'm kind of lucky that way because my lenses will adapt to sunlight. They're like a transitional type of lens. And so I get both of them in the same sunglasses. Lucky. I had to pay for it too. Uh, well, and this is where timing comes in as well. We all have things to do, right? I mean, get out of bed, get going on the day. Common sense will tell you when to do some things outside, at what times, and at what times of the day to avoid being out. I mean, one can get overheated just driving in traffic. Even with the air conditioning on, it's still very hot. Unless, of course, you garage your car, that works out pretty well, at least for that time. But when you're out driving in it for a while and you let it sit in the sun for a while, it's like kind of climbing into an easy bake oven. So you have to use some common sense, I think. You know, sun exposure, as this little write up here says, is pretty bad between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. I'd say that's probably where you're going to get hit the hardest with the heat. And that may vary depending on where you are. But so just in picture form, this gives you some idea of some things you ought to do. What do you all do to, well, to stay safe and avoid the heat, avoid, illness, sickness from things like, well, excessive heat exposure, you know, um, I want to say, because there's like progressions, worst case scenario is a heat stroke, you know, but a lot of us will just go out into the heat and we'll just I feel kind of sick. So it has an impact, even if you're out for a short period of time. So I don't know what you all do. Do a lot of you time when you're out? I think that's a good idea. Um, and do you take precautions? I mean, do you stay hydrated and rehydrate? Oh, prior, hydrate before, during, and after? That's a great idea because that's what we should be doing anyway. Only during the summer, uh, we need to be more acutely aware of how much fluid loss takes place. Ah, yes. Yeah, that'll come in handy too. So, I thought this was a good slide. I borrowed it. Um, the two individuals had gray hair, so I figured, well, it says for seniors, and I thought, oh, this is good. I'll borrow it. Oh, we are vulnerable to environmental changes, temperatures as we get older. It may not always be about temperatures. It might be things like um, direct heat, direct cold, direct, contact with what's doing the most damage when you're out in the elements, to, put it in a kind of a different sort of way. It's like, I remember when it was popular to sit out in the sun and hold a reflector, or, those kinds of things. It's kind of like, eh. And I was never a sun worshiper anyway, so I never bought into any of that. But a lot of you are outside, you like being outside. So, um, as we get older, how we deal with the heat, if you figure how you did when you were younger, you bounce back quicker. Um, you had an acute awareness when you were thirsty, which is something that elderly individuals, that doesn't that doesn't always trigger what you should do. Like, oh, I need more fluids. I need more fluids. Uh, Everything from how we sweat, our taste buds, what we drink, to how our body deals with, too much or too little fluids. All that changes. And I would say you need to be self-aware. You need to keep track of your own vulnerabilities. You need to know, like, all right, I've been out here long enough. Or, ah, this is getting too hot, or this is a little bit too cold. I've been out here for too long. So, you need to be aware of these kinds of temperature changes, direct heat, ice, snow, even rain. All these changes in climate will have an impact on you, so you got to be aware of it. I pulled this from Gerontological Nursing and Healthy Aging. Um, in fact, that's a book I draw on a lot. Uh, Early intervention in extreme temperatures and extreme temperature exposures is critical, because of excessively high temperatures. The worst case scenario, if you're out in the heat for a very long time, you don't know exactly how much your core temperature is affected by that. Or on the opposite end, we're talking about out in the cold and how your core temperature will respond same way. Um, and that, our thermoregulatory mechanism, it does have an impact, um, on our hypothalamus and what triggers how temperature is regulated. Um, that system, along with others, doesn't work as well. When you were 20, 30, worked great, most cases. 60, 70, 80, mm, not so not so quick to respond and regulate what, in a way that you would expect the body to react in a normal state of affairs, changing temperatures. So in other words, we could be out there as older individuals and we might go right into a dangerous zone with temperature and not really, bells don't go off that I've been out here too long. And maybe your dry mouth, cracked lips, dry skin doesn't trigger that. Well, as we're younger, it's usually profuse sweating or shivering on the opposite end. But so there's changes in that internal mechanism, which is really kind of a feedback loop because, hormones and well, certain governing substances within the body that start up here inside the brain go into action. And if that mechanism isn't working, um, along with, and I know many of you take blood pressure medicines. I want to say drugs that diurese, or foods that you eat that diurese on top of that. So I'm talking about drugs like Lasix, and that's just one. That's a biggie because so many people are on that. Well, that's going to further complicate the situation because it's going to dehydrate you. You're trying to get rid of fluids, and your body needs to retain fluids. And blood vessels will dilate or constrict accordingly with what the environment is doing and what kind of medications you're on. That will have a detrimental effect on your cardiac health, blood pressure, heart rate, breathing too. So other drugs, illicit alcohol, narcotics, sedatives, tranquilizers, you name it, antihypertensives, can get in the way of this normal vasomotor thermoregulatory response. So, I don't know, some of you are probably pretty well aware of medications you take. That's also part of self-awareness. Oh, I take a medicine that diuresis. I'm going out into the heat, and that's going to further, that's going to make me perspire, and I'm not drinking as much. And so I don't know if any of you out there are thinking about how much water you drink a day. It's it's like what Angela mentioned about, get things going early if you know you're going to be out in the heat. Hydrate while you're out in the heat, and then when you return to a nice cool place, continue hydrating. So I think that is very good advice. Now, do we all follow something like that? Because it makes sense, common sense. But a lot of us are like in a hurry or we don't think about it. And you end up suffering the consequences, unfortunately. Yeah, sorry, I dragged on a little longer than I wanted to with that slide, but it does lead me to what I talked about or alluded to, what's going on in the brain with hormones, et cetera, and transmitters. Um, there's a feedback mechanism. Body detects a rise in temperature, brings about a corrective mechanism, right? Ah, you want to get the core body back to normal level. So it, you're that area of the brain acts like an on-off type of switch too, in a way. So the body detects rise in temperature, that mechanism goes into effect. It's also the same if your core temperature falls, you know, and your body detects this, then, that mechanism goes into display once again. It's kind of nice. It's kind of a beautiful mechanism, as I stop to think about it. And so there's an automatic response, which is what the body does. Kind of beautiful in that way. I don't have to like, oh, hey, body, you need to respond, press a button. No, the mechanism is built in. So again, this is kind of putting it in a different sort of way, but I don't know, maybe it's pressing the point too about negative feedback. Uh, that response to environmental change happens as a negative feedback loop in order to keep us in what's called homeostasis or a homeostatic, uh, environment inside. So again, um, everything depending on how long you're exposed to the heat and the sun and perspiration occurs. Um, if your temperature goes up super high, with heat stroke, which is a worst case scenario, it's not unusual to get a temperature of 106, 108, 109. And you think about it, this is going to have an impact on your organs. And if you're already dehydrated, blood isn't getting to where it needs to get. You're not making as much urine. Your urine output is going to ebb where it should be normally flowing and processing. Your thought processes in your brain aren't going to be the same either. This is all just to, heat exposure. Electrolytes are going to go out of balance, sodium and potassium. And that leads to consequences to your neurological system and your cardiac system, both. Oh, yeah, I should have used that. I forgot I put that in there. This feedback mechanism that occurs with temperature and temperature changes, the hypothalamus is a lot like a thermostat. When you turn the thermostat on, you want it to cool down. The thermostat stops at the temperature set point. So, that's kind of how I like to see, that's how I visualize this. All to maintain that certain temperature that you want, that your body wants, that your body responds the best to, internal systems work, they won't get overly cold and frozen. And on the other hand, you won't be extremely boiling, for lack of a better way of putting it. I think the worst thing, though, is the dehydration that occurs when you're out. You see athletes, you see people out and about drinking from water bottles. Athletes are carrying some form of rehydration with them. They know, they're self-aware, but the average person may not be this way. And they may take chances that go beyond your capacity to deal with. And that's a lot where a lot of changes, consequences, and bad things happen, unfortunately. So I think one of the biggest points, and I went to several places online, I wanted to compare. I put them all, and I wish I had included it in here. It was roughly a page of links, roughly a page, and nearly all of them had hydration at the top of the list. Hydration in response to you're losing water. Our bodies are how much? Very large percent water, right? So it makes sense. That was a very common theme. I wish I'd included that slide, to be honest. I just didn't. I don't know why. I'm doing a public health rotation for UCD right now in their School of Nursing. And some of the things we've gone over have to do with, well, what environment do people live in? If you got it good, you got it good. But what if you don't? What kind of housing insulation do you have? Age of the home. Do you have an air conditioner? Is it working? I know Mike, who comes in here like clockwork, his air conditioning was out for a while. And I said, that just brings back bad memories of when air conditioning was out for my family in the past and getting somebody there to repair, because it's always during the summer when the systems are overworked. It's like, God, I wish I had the foreknowledge that this was going to occur, but you don't. And then there's the power grid. Is the power grid old? Is the power grid insufficient depending on where you live? Are blackouts going to happen? Do you have a way to get out of the house? Do you have transportation? To get to a place where it's reliable, you're going to be cooled down, like a mall, for instance. And it used to be fast food places were a place to escape. I'm not sure that's used very often anymore, but and then of course, along with this and the use of your air conditioner is how quickly does your home heat up to an uncomfortable level? How quick does that happen? If your house is warm, you go outside, it's going to be very warm. So you got to have a plan, hopefully. How am I going to deal with it? It might be fans. It might be fans and cold water. Showers, cold showers, cool showers. If you have a pool, out in the pool, if the water's cool, go out in the pool, cool off. And then there's the possibility that you have to make a decision about, God, how do I power all these things to keep me cool? It's going to cost me money in the way of electrical bills. What if I don't have that kind of money? And I'm only mentioning this because these are things that might be affecting some of you. Maybe not. Maybe they are. You know, can you drive? Do you have a car? Mentioned earlier. Uh, fans. Fans are very important. Fans are very important. Whether your air conditioner is working up to snuff or not. Do you live in a place that, puts you at risk for some of these dangerous fluctuations in temperatures? One minute it might be extremely warm. Next minute, oh my God, I'm freezing to death. Some places have those kinds of, temperature changes. That's the environment. Um, yeah, can you afford to cool your house down in the first place? See, all these factors figure in to how somebody is going to be able to stay cool. Because that's another common thing, a theme throughout a lot of those links that I went through is getting out of the heat. How are you doing that? Okay, getting out of the heat, place that's covered, hopefully a little more climate controlled than being 90 in the shade, that kind of thing. So that was a very common thing along with hydration. This is the worst case scenario of heat illness. Oh, well, hyperthermia can be, no. Heat illness, hyperthermia is not heat stroke. That's the worst. That's the most dangerous part of it. And I put this up here. Again, I borrowed Elite Care. Uh, the symptoms of hyperthermia can include, you know, dizziness, headache, rapid heart rate. Okay. Because your circulatory system's trying to compensate for everything from loss of fluid to overheating, et cetera. And your cardiovascular system is just going to do what it can to compensate. Fainting, fatigue, absolutely. Low blood pressure, that's a response too. Muscle cramping, dehydration, loss of sodium, loss of other electrolytes in the process too, right? Nausea and vomiting. Yes. Sick enough that it turned your stomach from being out in the heat. Um, yeah. Yeah. You're outside and your body temperature goes well above normal range of tolerance, which is some people can tolerate more than others, so it might be individual, but it's bad if it's well out of that range. So you have an environmental heat load and you have a metabolic heat load, both working against you. And this is usually, okay, I'm glad that I put humidity in here because humidity as well as the heat make a difference too. They both together can cause hyperthermia. So if you live in a place that's humid as well as it gets the heat, well, it's a double whammy. I remember visiting Tennessee over the summer, and my God, uh, I had to shower 2, 3 times a day. I was drenched. This area here of my body all around is like, I may as well give up. Yeah, I was like, I don't think I want to live here. I, you know, I don't think I want to live in Tennessee or someplace in the deep South where humidity is out of control. Southerners like it. They're used to it. They're acclimated, but mm, not for me. Um, so for hyperthermia, there have been cases somebody's core temperature being 104. But there are other sources that claim 106. And when you think about it, when you run a normal fever for an infection or inflammation, sometimes we're talking about 100 to 101, maybe somewhere close to 102. And that's very uncomfortable. I can't imagine a temperature of 104, 105. That goes beyond uncomfortable. This is why things like delirium set in, these high fevers. You don't necessarily have to have an infection to go with it, but just the dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, and a core temperature that high will send you reeling. Now, I put a thing. I should have put that in quotation marks or some sort of brackets. That's what I mean. That young people and old people do not respond the same way. So somebody older, 70 years old, say 75, winds up in this hyperthermia state. I can see all of these probably doubled, or I want to just say, you know, put in bold. So let's see. Again, we went over some of these things. Staying safe in the hot weather. We talked about some of these things, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate the preventative things. If you know you're going to be out all day in the heat, don't go out with friends after you've had a long, hot day outside and then decide you're going to pour the beer down. That's not a good idea. Water or something, I want to say something on the level of certain types of sports drinks might help replenish things lost, electrolytes, even sugar. Uh, and then brings to mind what Angela is wearing. Angela's seated to my left. She's wearing a long-sleeved top. However, this long-sleeved top is light and breathable. So, your standard long-sleeve shirt's not the same. This material, breathable. So if it's also protects your, body from the heat, direct sunlight. So, exercising, now that's an issue too, if you're used to going out and bicycling. Yeah, I would say with aerobic exercise outside and it's 104, don't do it. Find a cool place like here. At least it's more climate controlled. Or go to your local gym if you have, if you have something with them. Because, on the other side of this, what to do if you don't do those things, guess what? Dizziness, cramping, swelling of your feet, ankles. That happens too when you're too overheated. All the blood vessels dilate and good Lord. Nausea and weakness. Yes. I don't know if any of you have experienced that kind of response. Usually weakness is the biggest thing. And I've experienced that for being out in the heat way too long. Nausea, not so much. I don't know how many of you out there have experienced nausea, but I know people I've been with, are on the verge of throwing up if they don't get in and out of the heat. And then a rapid pulse. Some of you are wearing eye watches or, that technology. And guess what? That's going to tell you right away. If you're at all looking at your watch and you have that exercise mode on, it's like, 1 minute it's less than 100. Next minute, Jesus, I didn't know my heart rate could go that high. And it doesn't take long. So per CDC, schedule outdoor activities very carefully. That is another thing that kept repeating itself throughout all these links. And I don't know why I forgot to put it up there, but that would have been accessible. Maybe what I can do is find another way to put it up on the website separate. Um, and then curb the strenuous activity as much as possible. Because remember, the harder you work, the harder your body's going to work out in the heat. And that's not a good thing. Pace yourself. If you like to exercise outside, be in the elements, etc. Well, if you're going to do it in the morning. Do it when it's cooler outside. Even if you wait till the evening, it can be a little bit too hot. But pace yourself. Don't go, like you're on a sprint. Go more like you're on a jog. Lots of sunscreen, hydration. I put lots of little stars by that one because that's at the top of the list. Hydration, hydration. Sports drinks. They do have their uses. Know the forecast. Everybody's got, God, we all have this thing called a cell phone. And on that cell phone is usually updates on the weather. Well, if you're concerned about that, usually there's a forecast. I used to be able to get that by looking at the paper if you got the paper, or wait for, somebody on the television to tell you what the forecast is for the next couple of days. So I don't watch much TV anymore, so I wouldn't get much out of that because I simply don't watch it. Breathable clothing is a big deal. So when you're perspiring, you're staying cool, but you're not staying, your skin and perspiration and what's coming off isn't staying stifled. On the other hand, stay indoors as much as possible, cool down. I used to see people with a little bottle of water attached to a fan. Kind of like what you can put over the eaves of your house, back doors, or out in the front. Turn that water on and a mist of water to help cool you off. I know it sounds, I don't know. It sounds like yesterday rather than today. I don't know how many people still do that, but anything to cool off. You get inventive. You have to. I know you have a pool. Do you have something like that?
Mister,
No. Well, the
I
pool.
do have an umbrella.
Umbrellas are good. I see a lot of people. Here's the thing. You can have breathable clothing, but I tell you what, glad you brought that up. Leanne brought up an umbrella. I see a lot of people outdoors in the sun with an umbrella. Yes, yes, yes. Good idea. Doesn't work just for the rain. It works for the intense heat. So I don't know if any of you out there do that. It makes sense to me. I keep two umbrellas in my car for use in the rain, or sometimes when I remember. Right, makes sense. It makes me look kind of geeky or weird, but I say, well, it's my skin, not theirs. So, all right. Let's see. Is there one beyond that? No. Okay. Now I know what happened. This is missing a slide too. On top of the other slide, it didn't include. Shoot. That's okay. I think it's time to break to questions, personal experiences, anything you wish to share about your experience with, summer heat, humidity, any advice, anything that works. Because honestly, this isn't an exhaustive list of things that work. This is just, broadly speaking, hydration. Well, there are a lot more things to hydrate with than just simple water, although a lot of us are averse to water. Water really doesn't taste good. You need to have water. So you get inventive, find ways. I remember as a kid, it was juice pops. It's sugary, I know. Snow cones when playing baseball, or sodas. And sodas are not necessarily recommended as a good way to rehydrate. So what about you? What about you out there? Is there anybody in Zoom land at the moment?
No, we have.
Oh,
Suzanne.
so Suzanne, anybody else out there care to share anything, advice, experiences?
Well, I have one hint.
Oh, cool.
Okay. You know, when you're getting in your car, when it's been in the sun and it's super hot, when you open the door, if you keep a little the spray bottle, you know, the mister like you use when you iron, you know, it's just a spray bottle of water in the car. Before you ever get in the car, just spray in the car several times. It, you know, the water evaporates immediately, but it'll cool it. It won't cool the car, but it'll reduce the temperature.
I
I mean,
didn't think of
it's
that.
not going to
That's
feel chilly when you get in, but it'll help with the start.
right. No, that makes sense. That's good advice. Thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Did everybody hear that? Um, so okay, anybody else? Anybody else have like an experience or like, oh, this taught me a lesson? That kind of thing. Because sometimes experience is a good lesson teacher, or it's a good teacher.
Just returned from Arizona.
Ah,
And it was, my son prepared me, but nothing prepares you what that sun feels like on your skin. And you really have to be very, very aware. It burns your skin within minutes.
yes.
And then even going out either early in the morning or later at night, it's hot, but you don't have the sun beating on you.
Okay, that's a great point. That's a great point, Carrie. Early in the morning or earlier in the morning and then later at night, the sun is set or the sun hasn't risen yet, right? So you don't have that direct heat. And so that makes so much sense. And hopefully that will help guide, future activities for some of you who may be like, well, I don't know, I got to get this done, or, you know, it'll help you, it'll help guide your activities accordingly. Like I can do this at night. I don't need to be out in the sunlight for this, or I can do this early in the morning, like working on plants, watering, whatever the case may be, taking the dog out for a walk, running, walking, bicycling, those kinds of things. Got to wait for the right time of day to do
I'm
that.
in the habit in the summertime of cooking in the morning.
Ah,
And, you know, it can be reheated easily in the microwave.
oh yeah.
Keeps my house cooler. And I'm usually very tired and exhausted in the afternoon. So I have a healthier meal because I can cook it and enjoy it. And I can hold here.
That makes perfect sense. Preparing food that you like or that you want to eat in the evening, but it requires a lot of heat to prepare it. A lot of appliances, whatnot, and it's going to generate heat, hot water even. Preparing in the morning when it's still cool, it's not going to affect the inside temperature so much. And then just what she's saying too is that you have that ready, you can reheat it, which is like a microwave thing, and it's ready to eat without all that fuss when it's the hottest part of the day, maybe.
Don't have the energy.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And that's another thing too, as the day goes on, our energy wanes, it dissipates. May not when you're a kid, but when you're an adult, late middle aged, adult, older adult. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it certainly does. And I'm sure all of you have experiences with that and you could speak to that. So,
Be careful of the pets. You don't want them in the car.
yes. Yeah, that's another thing too. You love your pets. You don't want to keep them in the car where they're going to die from.
It just takes a few minutes. You might want to just run into somebody's house and drop something off. But it's incredible how fast the car can get just completely overheated.
Yes.
really quickly.
If it can kill a baby in the back seat because of an oversight on your part, it can kill an animal as well, especially given enough time. That's a very good point too, because we all love animals, right? We don't want them to stay in a heated place for too long, and we don't want them shivering in the rain too long either. So that makes perfect sense, because that's also part of your daily routine if you have animals. So that's a very good point. Wow, okay. Anybody else think of anything? Having any problems, challenges with staying cool right now? Out in Zoom land? No? Okay, hopefully this was helpful. I narrowed it down. There's so many things during the summer. The heat and the consequences of being overheated, just one of them. That's just one. Because our behaviors, what we do, et cetera, change when it becomes summertime. And there are so many things we need to look out for, especially as older adults. Everything from what we eat, how we eat, where we go, what we do, et cetera. Heat and exposures. So anyway, I think then it's time to adjourn this meeting. And thank you for being here. And hope some of this information was helpful. If you've heard this before, it's a refresher. And we all need refreshers, right? I do all the time. I forget. My wife gives me refreshers on a constant basis. So yeah, we all need a refresher. Okay, so let's all right, how do I get out of this? Yeah, you're welcome.